De Castro's been on a winning streak lately, and he's showing no signs of backing down. He's been victorious in 2 fights since he left the UFC in 2021, and is now facing the heavyweight champion Junior dos Santos in a 3-round fight. It'd be safe to assume he's about to add another name to his list of wins very soon. First up, De Castro versus dos Santos. On a recent MMA Fighting podcast, De Castro divulges a few tips his trainer taught him. Who would he train under, you would ask? Well, none other than the one and only Jon Jones. Surprise, surprise. Jones advised De Castro to wrestle with Cigano instead of dos Santos. For those who don't know, Cigano is a cheeky nickname for dos Santos that seems to have stuck, even after he cut his long hair. To no one's surprise, De Castro wanted to go all out, beast mode if you will. But Jon Jones instructed the fighter to focus on mixing up his techniques if he really wanted to win. Dos Santos is a black belt in jiu-jitsu after all, and one of the special tricks Jones learned was to watch out for dos Santos' hands when boxing. After all, it's all in the hands, isn't it? Now, just imagine beating your desired rival by a KO. Yup, that's just about the biggest dream of every UFC fighter out there. De Castro's no less, and he definitely wants to go in for the kill. Dos Santos, aka the Junior, has knocked almost everybody out. To beat him would be the victory of a lifetime, to put it mildly. De Castro goes on to say he's confident he can go 15 minutes on the feet with Junior. You know what they say, confidence is key, and De Castro seems to know that. I think it's my time. I'll win this, says De Castro. Needless to say, his head's definitely in the game. Next we have dos Santos. As for Junior, well, it's been a while since he's walked to the cage. He'll be face-to-face with De Castro for the first time after leaving the UFC on a 4-fight plunge against the best of the best. That in mind, De Castro still considers him the OG. Junior's most definitely in his GOAT list. We're not kidding when we say De Castro has huge faith in dos Santos' abilities. He's quite literally stated himself that there isn't a bigger name than his. Sure, Junior hasn't been doing so hot lately, but his legacy is insane. At least according to De Castro it is. He respects him a lot, clearly, but there comes a point where a UFC fighter's gotta leave all those formalities outside the cage. Don't be fooled though, De Castro has said that his respect for Junior as a human being trumps everything. Making your UFC debut after another insanely respected fighter, dos Santos no less, swept the UFC Heavyweight Championship is quite the achievement, if we're being honest. De Castro debuted in 2014 and describes the feeling of sharing a cage with Junior as surreal, admitting that when he got the offer, he agreed before his manager could even tell him about the purse, which really is his main goal as a part of the UFC. If that doesn't tell you about De Castro, then we don't know what does. Now, for De Castro, Jones will be a heavyweight champion. De Castro wholeheartedly expects Jon Jones to impress audiences when he'll make it to the heavyweight division, more specifically the 265-pound division. Though Jon Bones Jones has been trying to begin his heavyweight career for a while now, issues with his gym and fighting laws have always sprung up. Now we know for sure that Jones and Stipe Miocic will be coming to the octagon very soon. September 2022 estimated, where Jones will have his debut in the heavyweight category. De Castro said in a recent episode of an MMA Fighting podcast that his days in the gym with Jon Jones made him see the MMA legend in a whole new light. Now, as a heavyweight fighter, he has a better idea of what to expect from the fighter, and we're all ears. Unsurprisingly, De Castro was confident in Jones' ability to fight at heavyweight, taking his time to think about the kinds of fighters that would actually prove to be a challenge for Jones to overcome. He named Fabrizio Verdum, specifying that any fighter who'd give Jones a good fight on the ground would need to have a good ground game. And De Castro doesn't think any other fighter holds a candle in front of Jones, clearly. He expressed how Jones has good wrestling, yes, but is even more superior on the ground. Stipe Miocic would be a perfect match for Jones though, according to De Castro, since he's pretty much the same weight and height, but he's still assured that Jones will clear Stipe without as much as breaking a sweat. Next up, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. De Castro emphasized on how Miocic is actually the perfect opponent for Jones, especially his heavyweight debut, because the latter is one of the most dominant, well-known UFC champions. If anything, Miocic needs to get back into the game ASAP. His defeat to the current champion Francis Ngannou needs to be avenged, and fighting Jones is the perfect opportunity, seeing as Jones' debut is probably the most awaited UFC event of the year. De Castro theorizes that Jones would take down Miocic with a total knockout. Not a very light claim, we must say, but it's a testament to his faith in Jones. His reasoning makes sense though. Jones has been preparing for 2 years now. The man's as ready as he can get, and his strength levels are greater than several other fighters in the UFC, not to mention his stamina, which which, according to De Castro, is insane. Apparently, he'll hit pads for 2 hours straight, with no breaks and no slowing down. This is something we've only seen Jackie Chan do in the most absurd action movies. But we digress. De Castro made it clear that with Jones, one can never be comfortable during fights. He'll switch up on you so fast you'll be knocked out before you can say sparring. His fighting technique is such that if you get comfortable using, for example, your hands, he'll begin wrestling you. If you try getting up, he'll use his elbows and knees to keep you down, which is a combination of wrestling and jiu-jitsu that seems to be only Jones's expertise. This kind of versatility is impossible to find elsewhere, and it's certain to work in his favor. And now, a potential fight between Jones and Ngannou. Though he's clearly super confident in Jones's potential to beat Miocic in his upcoming fight, De Castro doesn't think Jones will be sparring with Ngannou again after his unfortunate defeat by the latter. But this isn't because he's been defeated once, it's because if they were ever to fight again, there would be a clash in timing. Ngannou needs a total of 15 months to A. heal his knee, and B. spend time in training camp to get back on track. In this scenario, Jones would already be 35 years old, and the champion has already told De Castro that he's not going to fight more than 3 times. But if the universe aligns in a way that Ngannou fights Jones again, well, let's just say the odds won't be in his favor. Most of the podcast episode was De Castro reiterating how great of a wrestler Jon Jones is, expressing how his wrestling and jiu-jitsu skills together give him a different leverage over other fighters, and touching his feet is next to impossible. His distance is amazing, and his techniques are one of a kind. So Jones KOing Ngannou wouldn't just be a far-fetched dream. Finally, Henry Cejudo. Jones can only be stopped at heavyweight with brute force. Henry Cejudo seems to agree wholeheartedly with De Castro's observations of Jon Bones Jones. In his words, throwing the kitchen sink at Jones is the only way any other fighter would stand a chance at victory in the octagon with him in the heavyweight category. To put it simply, only brute force can stop him and nothing else. Cejudo, though, holds the belief that Jones is too technical, skilled if we may, for the heavyweight category. He believes Jones has the potential to fight over 10 more fights and retire without a single defeat. Much like De Castro, Cejudo is greatly anticipating Jones's fight against Miocic, emphasizing on how Jones's creativity will shine through. It's safe to assume he's also referring to Jones's unique jiu-jitsu/wrestling talents and his one-of-a-kind effective fighting techniques, especially his defensive skill. Stipe Miocic, on the other hand, seems to have no better skill than his stamina and/or endurance, but that's about it. When it comes to whom the better choice is between the two, it's evident that Cejudo has his money on Jones and Jones only. To fight a man like Jon Jones, Cejudo ruminates, there needs to be risk-taking, power, and great amounts of both at once. According to him, Jones knows how to win. He's a technician at the end of the day, and the only kind of fighter who can stop him is one that's unafraid to use great, risky force. No, you can't use technique to beat Jon Jones. Don't even think about it, Cejudo reiterates. He's way superior to anyone else facing him in that regard. No attack, counterattack, anticipation building, or whatever else will do you any good. There is no better competitor than him. Point blank, period. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.